All right. All right, since 6 p.m., the Board of Education has been in closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district. Discussion of lawfully closed meeting minutes, whether for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by Section 2.06. The sale or purchase of securities, investments, or investment contracts. Student disciplinary cases. The setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the district. Collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives. Can I have a motion to come out of closed session, please?
I move to come out of closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are in open session. Good evening and welcome to the October 5th, 2015 meeting of the Board of Education. Our mission is to educate students to be self-directed learners, collaborative workers, complex thinkers, quality producers, and community contributors. Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Student Ambassador President Kevin Angel, Board Members President Mike Yench, Kristen Fitzgerald, Susan Price, Terry Fielden, Donna Wonke, and Jackie Romberg.
Could you please rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item is good news.
We have great news. First, congratulations, and just to have fun with Mrs. Bell, we'll see if we can keep this in the agenda for about the next 3 board meetings. As is our practice with completion of the PhD. Congratulations to Dr. Kane Osborne for successfully defending his dissertation at Loyola University. Well done. Congratulations to Oh, absolutely.
The title is called Speculation, the Future of Global Education Markets.
Welcome. And it's a public document. People can find it and read it. They will.
Probably, but certainly it will be posted before December.
So, congratulations to Kane. Congratulations also go out to Meadow Glens for his designation as a National Blue Ribbon School by the U.S. Department of Education. And then congratulations to the district, who was represented us last weekend at a dinner with the DuPage County NAACP, who recognized District 203 for their continued collaboration and work with the DuPage County NAACP in advancing education for all students throughout the county. So a lot of great things happening. That's it.
Can we get the link to that when it's posted, Dr. Osborne?
If you're having problems sleeping in.
Okay. All right, we're up to public comment. I don't have any cards for public comment, but are there any people who would wish to address the Board of Education? Okay. Communications. First up is Student Ambassador Report.
So tomorrow at Naperville Central, we're having an all-school assembly by a man named Chris Herron, who is a former NBA basketball player who speaks about his struggles with addiction and his quest to maintain his sobriety. Unique at Central is that it's an all-school assembly, so unlike normal assemblies where there are 2, we will all be in the same room. We'll also be having a pre-assembly session in our second-hour classes to kind of prepare us for the assembly, and then afterwards a discussion about what he discusses. And then tomorrow night there is a community night for parents and students. It will be a different presentation than the one that was given in school, so students are encouraged to come to both. Additionally, on Wednesday, the Naperville Central volleyball team is hosting a Healing Hearts fundraiser to honor Matt Skransky, who sadly passed away this summer. He was an NCHS student. And that's to honor him and to fundraise for his memorial fund. Additionally, the Crosstown Classic is this Friday, so the annual North versus Central football game. Parent-teacher conferences are this Thursday and Friday. And a word of good news is that the Naperville Central Marching Band won first place in their competition, closely followed by Naperville North in second place. One final note, the PSAT is being given during school this year, unlike normal years when it's given on a Saturday. It's being given during school hours in the field house. So we have 306 students taking it this year. So 306. It's for high-performing sophomores and juniors.
Oh, thanks, Kevin. Dan?
Okay. We have several reports. I'll invite the school improvement team from Steeple Run to come forward. As you're aware, one of our Focus 203 or Focus 2020 strategic commitments is to implement a common research-based school improvement process to help us focus on student achievement and growth. And so monthly, we've been inviting one of our schools, in this month at Steeple Run, to come before the Board of Education and give you an update on their school improvement plan and work in their schools. It's been a great, as you've heard through the stories of the various schools, a great way for us systematically throughout the district to have a common research-based aligned practice to look at school improvement, to exchange ideas and share information. And tonight I'm pleased to introduce Debbie Doyle, the principal over at Steeple Run, who will talk to you about her school. So go right ahead.
Got it. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. It is a privilege to be here to talk with you about our Steeple Run community. And on this first slide, what I did share is our theme this year, which is Be Courageous. And there's a quote from JFK, efforts and courage are not enough without purpose and direction. And our school improvement plan is what provides us with that purpose and direction. Also, our team, we work hard to align our school improvement efforts with the district's strategic blueprint and the systems of practice, as well as laws of school improvement. And we do work hard to make sure that that's aligning for student success. We align all that we do to our mission and commitments with the district. And of course, what's at the center of everything that we do are our students, which is reflected. You can't hear me, sorry. This is our school improvement team, which consists of administration, our learning support coach, our specialists, as well as classroom teachers. Also Tim Waranga, who's our cabinet liaison, who has been a great model and an informative leader for our school as well this year. And while this team that you see on this slide reflects our school improvement, our vision, reflects the leadership of our school improvement, our vision and expectation is that all staff take ownership over our school improvement goals and work together. So when thinking about school improvement, it starts with knowing your population. So when I look at Steeple Run, our current enrollment is 550 students. We do have dual language classrooms, kindergarten through third grade, and we did welcome some students and families this year from a self-contained special education program that's now at Steeple Run that we service that has differences in their social emotional learning. Our gender breakdown is 47% female, 53% male. 10% of our population is serviced through individual education plans or special education. 1% is serviced through 504 that might need some accommodations, modifications. 19% of our population qualify for free and reduced lunch. And 20% of our population this year is LEP or limited English proficiency. So as our team looked at our population, we wanted to look through a more detailed lens at our ethnicity and our LEP population. So this slide here represents 2011-2012 school year and what our ethnicity was at Steeple Run and the current school year, 2015-2016. And the colors do not match, but what you would see is that within the white population, we have decreased slightly, and our Asian and Hispanic have increased slightly. But from looking from 2011 to 2015, Steeple Run always has been a culturally diverse school. As we dug into our LEP population, this graph reflects that in 2011, we were 1.24% students with LEP population, and as you can see, it grows to our current year, we're 20%. And when we look at this, it's important for us to know, and I'm going to toggle back, that while Steeple Run has always been a culturally diverse school, one difference over the last few years has been that increase in LEP population. And I think that that's knowledge that we need to have moving forward as we look at our school improvement and student performance at Steeple Run. So as we know our population and we move forward into our goals, our first goal in our school improvement plan is related to a school compact. And a compact is defined as a written agreement between teachers, primary caregivers, and students. It's a document that clarifies what families and schools can do to help children reach high academic standards. And our school community values that school-family working relationship. So this compact provides with us a common language as well as an agreement and commitment to all families, students, and teachers taking ownership over their growth. This is our school compact at Steeple Run. Survey data was collected from all stakeholders to develop this common language. It was shared on curriculum night by administration as well as teachers. And what's wonderful is teachers and parents also talk with students about what this agreement is and what our common language will be at our school. And it really highlights our commitment to the school-family relationship. The next goal in our improvement plan, the next two goals are tightly linked together. This goal is related to looking at data and looking at school improvement. Steeple Run staff are committed to regularly looking at student work and assessments, and we use that information to make decisions about instruction. Our third goal, which is related to differentiation and individualizing instruction in response to student performance, we also make this commitment as all teachers will adjust instruction in response to individual student needs. And as we talk about differentiation, at Steeple Run we talk a lot about not just academic differentiation, but culturally responsive practice as well as differentiation with social emotional learning with our students. So when we think about looking at data and how to differentiate instruction, the avenue in which and the task that we most utilize to make that happen is through our professional learning communities, otherwise also known as PLCs. PLCs implement the plans and instruction for achieving the school goals by really utilizing these four questions. What do we want students to learn? How will we know what students have learned? How will we teach it? And what will we do when students do not learn or they reach proficiency before the expectation is required? So when we think about PLCs, as a school leadership team, one of the first steps that we took was related to organizing building schedules. Our school improvement team worked last year on a special schedule that allows grade levels the opportunity to meet weekly in their PLCs to review data and plan differentiation of instruction. We also have developed a literacy block schedule that supports efficient use of our resources as to when literacy is being taught throughout the day. Schedules are one building block. Another important is a structure or process of communication. Communications in PLCs within our teams and buildings is critical for us to be successful. Each PLC utilizes agendas, norms, and formats for notes, and they're posted and put together in one central location so that all administration, specialists, and support personnel are able to access that information to most efficiently support students. So with the foundation of building schedules and a structure and process for communication, here are a few examples of the tasks PLCs participate in to increase student growth for all students. They examine student work, they might complete an error analysis, highlight what students are doing well, discuss where students struggled, discuss what they could do in the classroom right away, and they also discuss other ways to support learners who may need additional support or enrichment in their classes. So what I'm going to show you now is a video which kind of indicates some feedback from our teachers on how they feel PLCs have allowed them to look at data, differentiate, and also target instruction.
PLCs are a great tool to help close the achievement gap because we do whatever it takes. When we meet with each other, we think about what best practices are going to help our students. Basically, at the end of the day, we're doing whatever it takes.
I've been really grateful as the music teacher to be able to meet as a PLC with my fine arts team, the teacher and the art teacher and the LRC director to make sure that our instruction is aligned with best practice.
PLCs in our building are very powerful because it gives us an opportunity for teachers to come together and
all students across our whole grade level. In the past, I always felt like I kind of looked at my own class instead of really the bigger picture. So that really helped us to see who the struggling learners really were, what kind of support they needed, and it also helped us to really realize who's at the top of the class that we should be enriching.
Every time we meet and we talk about students and bring their work samples into class, it's as if those kids are right in the room with us and they're an integral part of helping us succeed.
So as we talk about our PLCs and how much the data in those PLCs have really given us a lot of information to guide instruction for students. As we continue to create school and family partnerships and commit to looking at data and differentiating instruction, this is some data that we celebrate. We celebrated this fall. One source of student growth is the eCRIS portal, and that's the data that's reflected here. In this portal, student growth is based on looking at each student's testing history, and then a target is created for the next school year. As you can see, Steeple Run School is showing expected growth in the areas of reading and math, and our school improvement team will continue to look at data and trends, as well as subgroups, to be sure our school improvement goals are resulting in positive growth for all students. At Steeple Run, our staff, our families, and our students demonstrate courage with their commitment to our school improvement process, and we are dedicated to teaching the whole child each day at Steeple Run.
All right, thank you. Excellent report. Any questions from the board? Donna?
Thank you, Debbie. As I've gotten to spend a little more time at Steeple Run this year with my liaison school, it never ceases to amaze me that I learn something new every time we talk. So the school compact is something that we haven't seen before. I love the idea. I love it, what you're doing there. Can you explain to us a little bit about how, you said the process leading up to it and the fact that we have it in front of us, but how, after it's all signed, does Steeple Run take that then and promote follow up and encourage continuation in that and growth for the follow through?
Sure, that's a great question. Last year, just to show growth of our school improvement, last year was the first year we used the compact. What we did with our school improvement team was meet and review, was it living and live in our building, in our language, and what we were doing. So this year, some of the things that we're doing is teachers created visual posters of what the student expectations were as well as theirs. Again, as I indicated, we did highlight it at curriculum night this year and kind of had a deeper conversations with parents about the expectations, as well as Mrs. Vaness and myself on announcements in the morning highlight some of what our students are doing well in the compact and honoring them within that as well. So I think our teachers we're beginning to integrate that language into our classrooms and our everyday practice.
Thank you. And then the differentiation part, there is so much going on in the schools with the PLCs, and that's so behind the scenes. And then as we get into the classroom, I'm sure the students can see a little bit of what's happening with differentiation, but by the time it gets to like the community members who have questions like, is it actually happening? It's difficult, I think, for a parent to see the differentiation in the class. Mm-hmm. So I love that you've highlighted with the, what the teachers are doing. Is there any way that we can, how does Steeple Run communicate that back to the parent? How is that communicated back to the parents so that there is that connection, that bridge?
Sure, and I didn't highlight, but you saw on our Steeple Run goals, the indicator, which was in black, which is the way it's actually written. The green language that you saw, we worked with our home and school exec board on parent-friendly language, which actually came from parents who said, what does differentiation mean? It's a school term. I don't really understand. And there was a conversation we had around that. I do think we do highlight through our classroom newsletters what's going on, while on the same hand, what we are proud of at times is there's a lot of differentiation going on and the students aren't comparing themselves to others all the time because it's done in such small, they might have been moving in small groups. And sometimes differentiation isn't based on ability, it's based on interest. So also the flexible differentiation, the groups could always be changing when you're doing it well. So we also do take pride in that they all are doing something different all the time and no one feels different. We have started, to answer your question, we have started with our home and school exec board, working with them on what do these school improvement goals mean and what does it mean to them. And we have talked to them, differentiation was the example, and then they kind of understood and had some examples that might have happened for their students. But it's a great insight on how we can better communicate with families.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie?
Debbie, thank you so much. The question I wanted to, as long as, as we stream live and there's hundreds of people, seriously, there are a lot of people that either watch now or watch later. People do watch. I'd like you to just comment on your edition. And I know it wasn't the easiest edition in the world with permitting and all the different groups you had to go through. It was a city and the county and all. And you had a very patient community, school community, and that all this can be done, but you need the right workspace to be able to do it. And so if you can just comment, I know there were a lot of breakout groups. I saw kind of the before and after, but if you could comment on any of that.
With our new addition to the building, it's wonderful. Our community is so appreciative. It's beautiful, but it really has allowed our students and our parents and our families to be able to have different space in the building for different opportunities. To give an example, we will be doing, our home and school is doing during the day assembly and then a night assembly where they do the same thing with the parents at night. That's actually next week. And we wouldn't have had the facility space to do that before. So there's a lot of ability that we have. To be able to have lunch in the multipurpose room and allow specials to continue on has also been a great flexibility into that master schedule to allow our teachers to have that time to meet and work together on looking at data and differentiation. So it's had a major impact, and our community is incredibly appreciative, and as well as our teachers. It's been really, really wonderful.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Kristen?
Sorry, these are new microphones.
I got it to green, but then I turned it off by accident. Okay, I got it. Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you for your particularly reviewing the growth in your limited English proficiency. And I think I remember from talking to you, maybe through SFCP, how many different languages are spoken.
Yeah, we have 35 languages spoken at Steeple Run.
So
when you include dialects of different languages.
So not even just, I think sometimes you think, limited, and you think of what maybe one or two, but it's such a wide variety. I think that's really unique about Steeple Run. How are you've got great growth results here for your school. How are your results for your LEP students comparing with your overall results for the school in terms of growth? Are they outpacing? Are they on target? And what kinds of things are you doing if there are any gaps to address gaps that may exist in terms of your limited English proficiency students versus your students who might not be limited English?
We have identified a gap with our LEP population. The steps that we are taking are really related to professional learning for teachers around how to pair language targets along with content targets, and that so that they're getting that language instruction all day, not just when they're with the ELL teacher, as well as we did have some staff this summer that attended SIOP training, which is related to different types of lesson planning to support language learners. And I want to celebrate too that I have 4 or 5 staff that are back in school getting their ELL endorsement as well, because it's something that they're interested and passionate about.
All of those sound like great activities that will really improve the instruction and hopefully make a difference with some of the gaps that you're seeing.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Any questions? All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
I know you have some team members here. Do you want to just
I want to
introduce them real
introduce
quick?
Nancy Vanessa, our assistant principal, and Robin Lipkowitz, our learning support coach. They were here out of support. Thank you.
Okay, next item, summer learning.
Okay, the next report we have is really the first of 3 conversations with the Board of Education. regarding summer learning. As you know, we've made a significant investment in summer learning as one of our strategies to address summer learning loss, potential achievement gap issues. And so tonight is really a summary report that you have for this past summer. During November, on November 2nd, November 16th, our conversation will be more about what we're doing next year. Tonight is a review of this past year. I think Kane and our Director of Summer Learning, Kevin Wolkowicz, are going to give a couple of highlights of some of the successes and then really be prepared to respond to questions that you have regarding the summer school report. So, Kevin?
Good evening. And thank you for the opportunity to present the results of the 2015 Summer Learning Experiences, and thank you in advance for your ongoing support of our summer learning programs. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the summer directors and others who helped make summer learning a success. Susan Geddes, who's our elementary director, who's here tonight. Jackie DeCipio, who is our junior high director. Heather Shield and Dan Olandisi, who are our high school directors. Randy Kulik, summer music. Matt Olenek, summer science. Lisa Exagus, Missy Mitchum, David Perlman, and Melena Napier, extended school year. Marion Freebus Flamen, ELL, and a special thanks to Liz Myers and Don McQuillan in transportation, and Sophia Lewis, Kim Musto, and Susie Pope in information technology. In November last year, we presented you recommendations tied to Blueprint Commitment 1.16e, implement summer school recommendations that maximize opportunities to advance student learning. The recommendations were implement strategies to increase summer learning access, implement support services, and implement a plan to leverage community resources. Increasing access meant we were committed to providing transportation for all levels, splitting our elementary program into two sites, a north and a south, to accommodate increasing enrollment, combining our ESY, general education, and ELL programs, and providing food service for all levels. Implementing support services meant the addition of learning behavior specialists, social workers, psychologists, counselors, and special education assistants to the various programs to provide a continuum for students who receive these services during the regular school year. Leveraging partnerships and community resources meant doubling the size of the Park District summer camp at the elementary sites and exploring the potential for in-district daycare for summer school staff. The report provided to you outlines the successes we experienced through our summer programs this past year, as well as the challenges we face moving forward. Our successes included enrollment in all programs increasing or remaining steady, students from at-risk backgrounds being served at a higher rate than in past years, over 1,100 general education and ELL students accessing transportation to our elementary, junior high, and high school sites, partnering with Sodexo to provide snacks to students at all levels, better meeting students' needs with the addition of social workers, counselors, and or learning behavior specialists, and growing our partnership with the Naperville Park District that resulted in Camp LOL total enrollment doubling since last year. The single most important improvement that has included a change in mindset among staff and families about the efficacy of summer learning. As we improve the rigor of summer learning while increasing access to those who need it most, we believe a sustained yearly summer learning experience will narrow the achievement gap and support the district's vision of sustaining a passion for lifelong learning. Challenges to continuing to fulfill the recommendations of the Summer School Committee revolve around funding, staff capacity, and operational capacity. We look forward to answering questions about what's contained in the report, about summer programming, and seek guidance from the board with respect to how we can best continue to implement the recommendations of the Summer Learning Committee in a fashion that is sustainable and responsible.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Kristen? Or Susan?
Oh, that worked. We've got new microphones, and our older brains take a while to absorb the information. Thank you for your report. A couple of questions. When you say that, especially for our special needs students, that we had assistance and additional support, we've always had those programs for our special needs students who get summer programming. So we always had those aids. Was there an addition to that, or was there an increase in the services that were provided over what had been provided?
At ESY, the services remain the same, but in our general education programs, we did add a learning behavior specialist to our summer high school staff to work with students who had IEPs or 504 plans, provided them with the accommodations that they would have gotten during the regular school year. So again, we just tried to continue with that continuum of services for students that they received last year. That also happened at the elementary level through the use of a social worker, and then we also added a counselor to our junior high staff.
And a second question is, are you going to be able to track, I'm looking through to see if I missed it, are you going to be able to track those students, especially those high-need students or at-risk students, to determine the effect that the summer programming has on future performance?
And so that's part of our, our future plan here as we begin to look towards a digital profile for students so that we're able to look at their performance over time, which would include summer learning.
I'll just add, it's only been 2 years now that we've, below the high school level, had summer students in Infinite Campus. Previously, it was all paper. And so our hope is once we sustain them in the student information system, but also as we revamp the curriculum, which is what we're doing this year, we'll do a program evaluation in the future when we can sit down and determine it's the appropriate point to do so.
Thank you. And I appreciate that we have moved this program, and I think it's something that we should promote as well, as thinking of it more than as a self-existing summer program, but as an extension of our school year, especially for those students who need that extension and that additional either enriching or supportive learning. So, thank you.
Kristen?
I agree that that would be really compelling data if we were able to track performance or improvements based on what we were able to see from summer school participation. I also am thrilled to see the participation so high, particularly looking at the kids who we were really hoping would come to summer school, those who are, potentially maybe a little bit behind or some that are economically disadvantaged. I noted a couple of the little areas that particularly were high. Kinder Up looks really, what do you attribute your success there in terms of really seeing that boost in the 2015 numbers for Kinder Up?
I'm not sure if we have any specific, I know Ms. Getz happens to be a kindergarten teacher. That doesn't hurt. And an excellent promoter of our summer school program to boot. So those two things, I do seriously think Susan's promotion of the program is one of the single biggest factors around the elementary enrollment.
I would say promotion in general, one of the efforts that the group that works on summer school is really committed to is better communication of information about opportunities that are available for all students, and really the shift in the mindset of there's a particular learning style that we have targeted for summer school we have opportunities for everybody in summer school. And as Board Member Price said, it's not an extra thing or a thing that sits out there on its own. It's part of our overall educational program. So I think kind of that mind shift and the communication as well is what's leading to increased enrollment.
Well, absolutely. And if you look at the junior high, in particular, the area with Project Lead the Way, which was a new offering, I mean, that particularly, to me, suggests the continuance because it's a new unit, right? Sorry, I'm really struggling with the microphone. But it's the new unit where you are able to continue on. Wasn't it something about flight or something like that?
Right, flight and space.
Right. So it is actually almost that fourth unit for Project Lead the Way. I was puzzled, and Kane helped me, so I am going to pass on the information to my colleagues, but I was puzzled by the greater disparity in the high school costs compared to the elementary. And Kane explained that that was because of the transportation and the fact that it was 6 weeks as opposed to the other ones, which are longer. So looking forward at wanting to see us continue to, serve the kids that need to be served, what kinds of flexibility do we have within our current fees that we're charging our fee-paying students in terms of to offer any additional greater support? How do we, when you look at how our summer school offerings are comparing to other school districts or other private offerings that people might be going to, how do we look in terms of, do we have potentially a little bit more there where we could support expansion of these programs, with additional fees, in addition to, what you may need to, greater investment maybe from the board. But what kinds of things do you think about in terms of where we are with our fees as to how we can continue to help these programs grow?
That's a pretty big question. I would say on a couple fronts. Last year we came to you with a proposal to increase fees over a 3-year period in such a way that they would still be very competitive with surrounding districts, with benchmark district fees. Also, we could look, and we have a few other ways we could look at. We could look at the transportation costs and look at whether or not a reasonable fee is appropriate there. No one fee change is going to fund everything perfectly.
Right.
So really, I think it's our job to sit down and look at the numbers over the next month and come forward with kind of a number of pieces in place that will, again, make it a responsible proposal to the board. We're very grateful for the investment the board's made to make this better, to bring in more kids who can really benefit from it.
Yeah.
But that's not infinite, and we want to make sure that it's very well defined. I think we learned a little bit about budgeting for our own success this year. We simply did not project we would get the increases that we did in enrollment, particularly the uses of transportation that we did. So now I think we'll come back and relook at how we project forward so that we can put in fees that are appropriate to meet that overall cost.
Jackie?
I have to be able to work the microphone.
Yeah.
What is the reimbursement? I know our reimbursement in the regular school year is pretty good for transportation. Does that follow suit in the summer? I'm looking at I see the transportation costs and I see refunds, but they're not always.
It does not follow suit, I believe, during the summer. That's one of the challenges.
Well, so we need to report that to somebody that'll listen.
Yeah.
Right? Because, you say you have this achievement gap, you say you want to do these things, but come on, folks, help us out. So,
Right, because I think we're taking this program in a positive direction, and it's exciting to see it. But yeah, if we can,
I would
those
love to.
arguments.
I don't know if there's grant money out there. I don't know. I would love to understand that. It's great that we have all these directors and instructors that are promoting the program. But transportation is a huge part of it, and I'm certain it's a huge limiting part for some families. Great that the park district's there on one side from a child care and a safety standpoint, but I would really like to see somebody pony up and help us with some of the transportation. So it's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Donna?
Can you explain a little bit more? First of all, I love that we were reaching so many more students that we were trying to reach, and I'd love to have the answer to Susan Price's question, too, about following those students through. But in regards to the financial summaries, what exactly goes into the refunds? What is the refund piece? And then I have another question about the financials.
Sure. In terms of the refunds, and if we look at the high school refunds specifically, parents, when registration opens, a lot of times will register students for more classes than they can possibly take to make sure that they're in something for the summer. Plans change, course trajectories for students may change, and so they may change those enrollments before the summer session starts. So, they may drop a class and add a different one. We add all that into the revenue, so we report all of the refunds that we distribute as well.
Okay, that's what I thought we were talking about for refunds. But for the transportation, is there any revenue? There's revenue coming in for transportation, just not much, or there's none?
There's no revenue currently for busing.
Okay, that's what you just said. Okay.
And that's something we could explore and look at in the future.
So when we look at the high school, including driver's ed, and I see that you have tuition and state reimbursement for driver's ed, there's expenses involved with driver's ed too, but we haven't itemized those out. So I guess that's a little confusing to me as to why we would itemize out the revenue but not the expense.
Honestly, last year we didn't itemize out the
Okay.
revenue. I think it was just we just decided to break it out this year. 2 years ago, it was broken out. And we did move back towards integrating it with high school, just like because we should really. It's a high school class. So It tends to stand alone a little bit in terms of programming. Families really think about, I'm taking driver's ed, and then don't necessarily think about the rest of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
But are the expense, is that offering that in the summer a big expense to us? That's what I was trying to understand.
We'd have to break it out. It's staffing. It's
Okay.
it's the staffing. It's like the rest of summer school. The
Yep.
staffing cost is less than during the regular year.
Thank you. Great report.
Mike?
Yeah, I seem to remember when we did break them out before that driver's ed was always the, no, it was,
Yeah,
we always
Made money?
broke even or made money. And so, because we looked at that as much more optional than some of the other stuff. So, and I know it's not broken out that way here, but I'm pretty sure that the history shows that we tried to balance the driver's ed out as much as possible, even if we have to invest in the other courses, which I agree with 1,000%. The one thing I want to say is, well, first let me ask Dan, because I was looking at the board calendar. We don't have a specific time to discuss the plans for next year's summer school on the calendar yet. What time? I don't think.
Yeah, we do. The November 2nd, November
Planning calendar, I
16th.
didn't see it. Oh, okay.
Yep, November 2nd and 16th.
Oh, I guess I looked too far in advance, sorry. So, we got a big increase in our budgeted part for the thing, but does that reflect just revenue increases too? Or, because when I read the budget on the summer school, it said an additional $65,000 investment from the school board was expected. Is that on top of the $65,000 last year for $130,000 more? Do you remember that, Brad?
No, it's just the 65,000. Summer school is coming off of this last year's budget. So it's the amount we approved in the prior budget coming on to this year.
Okay, so summer school for next year is this year's budget, isn't it? Or is it?
Well, summer school gets split out. So what
Okay,
we
it does
do
get
is,
split out? Okay.
Well, it crosses fiscal years, but for ease of operation, so the summer school 15, it was budgeted in the 14-15 year because we want the money budgeted in
Right.
advance going into it. So now 16 summer school will be allocated and budgeted in the 15-16 year.
And it is in there, and I saw it was a $400,000 increase, which is great. I mean, don't get me wrong, it means it's successful. Because one of the things I'll bring up next month then is, I think if we're making this an extension, we're going to have to invest some more money. Because, and I heard what you said, and you didn't say that, the fees are going to go up. But, I'd be reluctant to have anybody have sticker shock when they look at this, even though we're trying, we have more expenses with transportation. This is, I think, an investment just like we would make in the school year. If we're going to, talk the talk, we got to walk the walk and make these investments. And, I'm willing to bet the bang for the buck is pretty good too, but if we can measure that, even better. But, okay, thanks.
Jackie?
I just can't wait till November for this question. Is the elementary summer school program going to be extended? Or is that like under wraps? You can't talk about that yet? Because that was the shorter one, and high
Right.
school was longer.
Right. So part of the original committee's recommendations were to bring forward a 6-week summer school model for K-8. Okay, 9-12 is already 6 weeks. ESY is already 6 weeks. So that's part of the plan that when we brought that original set of recommendations to you. So we will bring that forward
That'll be huge.
with modeling as well as we can get it.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you.
Mike?
Just a quick follow-up to that. Have you reached out to parents at all to see what the interest is in that?
I have a survey ready to press the send button
Okay.
for all the parents who did attend. We have to figure out how we assess the ones who didn't attend, but I'm starting with the many thousands of names that Ms. Bell put together for me and figuring out the best way to get it to them, but I have the survey completed.
Thank you.
So,
Anyone else? Excellent report, very good news.
thank you.
Okay, just bear with me for a minute. One of the roles I get to play as superintendent is modeling microphone use and being microphone police. Those of us with the new ones, I've figured it out. You've got to have it a little bit closer and in front of you. not quite picking it up. So if you can make sure that for broadcast purposes and whatnot, we're in the video, we're capturing that, you can make sure it's close. That would be great. Thank you. Now with that, our next report is an update. If our team wants to come forward, I'll just make a couple of comments. This is an update and an overview, broad overview of the work that we're doing on ELL services and dual language in our district. Dr. Marion Friebus-Flaman is here with Mill Street Principal Mary Baum to talk a little bit about our programs, provide you an update on the work that we're doing. Dr. Hester, our Chief Academic Officer, will join them. And so they're going to provide you a broad overview. I think you may have some more specific questions that are not contained within the update tonight. So if there are some questions that we need to come back to, we will make sure that we do that. But I think we have a pretty general overview here for you, and I'll turn it over to Marion to begin.
The same problem that you had. It was green and then it was red. Yes.
Make sure it's in front of you.
All right. Good evening. We're here tonight to give you an update on the dual language and ELL programs, the changes we made last year as part of our cycle of continuous improvement, their impact on teaching and learning, and our next steps. My colleague Mary Baum is joining me this evening to present the building level perspective on the impact of these changes on teaching and learning. And Dr. Hester is also joining me for the questions portion of the presentation. The outcomes of this presentation are to provide the board with a report on the ELL and dual language students' performance, share the plans for the ELL and dual language programs for this school year, and of course to link those plans to the Focus 2020 strategic blueprint commitments for the dual language and ELL programs. Just as a quick refresher, Commitment 118B is the commitment to effective ELL program design, and 118C is the commitment to effective dual language program design. These are the requirements that the Illinois State Board of Education has for the education of English learners in public schools. In our district, Spanish is the only language in which we are required to provide transitional bilingual education, or TBE. We provide our TBE program through the dual language program, which has the added advantage of offering students who would otherwise speak only English the opportunity to also become bilingual, biliterate, and multicultural. English learners who speak other languages at home are provided a transitional program of instruction, TPI, support through our ELL program. Students in the ELL program receive 30 to 45 minutes of ESL instruction from the ELL teacher and receive the rest of their content instruction from the general education classroom teachers. Oh, sorry, I forgot. In our dual language program, students who speak English at home, students who speak Spanish at home, and students who speak both Spanish and English at home learn together in both languages. When we look at the language allocation by percentage, you will see that the language of instruction is allocated at 80% Spanish and 20% English in kindergarten and first grade, then gradually moves towards a balance of 50-50 in fourth and fifth grade. In junior high, the language allocation is designated by class periods, with students in sixth grade having 2 instructional periods in Spanish and seventh and eighth grade students continuing with 2 periods in Spanish with the option of 1 elective course in Spanish. Let's look at the language allocation a little differently. Here's the breakdown by content areas. This chart shows that beginning in kindergarten, instruction occurs in both Spanish and English in every content area. The language allocations in the content areas of math, science, and social studies do not specify the percentage for language allocation. This is because the overall balance for these content areas will reflect the language allocation percentage for the grade level, but we have not specified that each content area will follow the percentage daily. For example, in first grade, the teachers may plan to do a unit preview in English, teach the unit in Spanish, and then bridge the content knowledge into English with an extension activity that will be conducted in English. In this way, we ensure that students not only learn the academic content, but also are able to express their knowledge in both languages. Language arts, on the other hand, is taught in both Spanish and English daily according to the language allocation, and this is the way in which we promote simultaneous biliteracy. In 3rd through 5th grade, math is taught primarily in English with bridging activities to give students the Spanish vocabulary and language structures for the content area of math. Science and social studies are primarily taught in Spanish with bridging to English, so students will have the language skills in both languages to express their knowledge of academic content in these areas. This is a change in the way in which language allocation was implemented. We made this change in order to ensure that students who leave the dual language classroom for honors math do not lose Spanish language development time. The goals of the dual language program and ELL programs are similar in that they both strive to prepare students for college and career by engaging students in a rigorous pathway of instruction. They differ in that the dual language program delivers the district curriculum to students in Spanish and English in accordance with the language allocation plan for each grade level, with the goal that all students will be bilingual, biliterate, and multicultural. Because the dual language program fulfills a state-mandated requirement for English learners, which comprise roughly half of the students in the program, there is some overlap between the programs in terms of the English as a second language curriculum and how we measure progress in English language acquisition. This overlap can be seen in the first action step for each program. Teachers in both the dual language and ELL programs met regularly throughout the school year to ensure that literacy instruction was aligned to the district curriculum map and the new resources that were adopted last year. This was an opportunity for us to develop curriculum maps specific to developing proficiency in English as a second language and biliteracy in Spanish and English, which we call integration maps. Dual language teachers were provided with professional learning on simultaneous biliteracy, including the development of language objectives for English language arts and Spanish language arts. ELL teachers also had professional learning on language objectives and the development of language objectives for the ESL curriculum. 25 elementary ELL and general education teachers worked together this summer to learn about differentiating instruction for English learners in the general education classroom, and Steeple Run's teachers were part of that group. During the 3-day summer professional learning session, these teachers explored ways in which they can collaborate and co-teach to implement instructional strategies that are good for all students but essential for English learners. This collaboration between the ELL and classroom teachers is critical to the success of our English learner students since they spend most of their day with their classroom teacher and they need to have meaningful access to the curriculum all day long. By definition, English learners do not yet have the English language proficiency they need to fully comprehend grade-level academic content in English or demonstrate their mastery of academic content in English. We know that children will develop basic interpersonal communication skills relatively quickly, but need much more time to develop cognitive academic language proficiency. Illinois, along with 35 other states, uses the Access for ELLs assessment to determine students' English language proficiency in the core academic areas for kindergarten through 12th grade. We use this data to monitor students' progress in English proficiency and also to help us know how to support students in learning academic English. We use growth and academic achievement data from Performance Series and Fontes and Pinnell to see how close students are to being at grade level and how well they are progressing. While the assessments that were given in past years are no longer universally administered in the district, which prevented us from comparing current data to past years, we will be able to use this year as the baseline for comparison in future years. We're now using the Access for ELL's growth report, which shows the average rate of growth for students at each proficiency level. Students' rate of growth is compared to over 1 million students across the 36 states that use the Access for ELL's assessment. As you see, our English learners are making very good growth in English language proficiency. In addition to growth in English language proficiency, we also use academic achievement and growth data to determine students' needs. As you may recall from previous Performance Series reports presented to you by Molly Farmer and Tim Warenga, Performance Series scores are presented in quartiles with the expectation that 25% of students will fall within the range of each quartile. In a high-performing district like ours, we look for students to be in the high average to above average quartiles, which are shown in the light green and dark green on the chart. This chart shows the math achievement for English learners in both the dual language and ELL programs in 2nd through 8th grade. The data for the English learners in both programs is combined because the dual language program is our district's transitional bilingual education program for English learners whose home language is Spanish. As with the ELL program, where English learners whose home language is not Spanish, students enter the program at various grade levels. English learners whose home language is Spanish could enter the dual language program at any grade level. English learners who have been in the dual language program exit ELL status and enter the monitoring and previously LEP groups as they go up the grade levels and meet exit criteria. So the number of English learners in dual language goes down as the students meet exit criteria. The number of students stays the same, but their status changes. And new English learners come into the dual language program. And this creates a need to drill down to the student level in order to accurately interpret the data. And this is something that occurs regularly in the schools, but wouldn't be appropriate in this venue. On the far left of the chart, you see the performance of students who are currently considered to be English learners, or limited English proficient, LEP, as it's called on the chart. As you move to the right, you see the performance of students who have met the exit criteria and are in their first year, second year, and more than 2 years out of LEP status. On the far right are students who have always been considered English proficient. The performance series math data for English learners pictured here shows us that English learners are getting meaningful access to the math curriculum. We know this because any test in English is a test of English, yet on the left we see close to the expected distribution of 25% across the quartiles while students are considered LEP, and a steady shift in the quartiles as we move to the right and students become more proficient in English until we reach a point where students who exited 2 or more years ago outperform students who have never been considered as limited in English proficiency. This next chart shows us the percentage of students who met growth targets for each category. The district expectation is that the percentage of students meeting the growth target be 50% or higher. This chart shows our English learners are achieving the district growth target. As the students grow in their English language proficiency, and you look across to the right on the chart, we see that they continue to achieve the growth target after meeting the exit criteria. This performance series reading data includes 2nd to 8th grade English learners in both the ELL and dual language programs. As you look at the charts I'm about to present, I'd like to draw your attention to the shifts in the quartiles between the LEP monitoring 1 and 2, and then previously LEP. This chart confirms what we know from our Access for ELL's data, that most students identified as English learners are not reading at grade level yet. On the far left are the students who are currently identified as LEP. As the students represented by the red and pink gain proficiency in English, they shift from red to green. The English learners represented by the greens advance to LEP monitoring as they meet exit criteria. We can see as we move from left to right on this chart that English learners gain in reading achievement as their English proficiency level increases until they reach levels that are similar to those of students who were never considered LEP. Because of the close connection between English language proficiency and reading achievement levels, the important data to look at for this group of students is the growth. As a group, English learners represented on the left fell short of the district expectation of 50%. As we increase the rigor of literacy instruction for our English learners, the growth will continue to improve. We have already started to address this through collaboration with bilingual reading specialists and ELL and classroom teachers. And we're also building capacity for our classroom teachers to integrate culturally responsive instructional strategies to build English language development opportunities into their overall instruction. The achievement and growth data for students who have exited shows us that with our efforts in using appropriate language supports, English learners can achieve higher levels in reading. As with math, as students continue to grow after exiting the program, they approach a level that is on par with their monolingual peers. A concern that often arises when parents who only speak English enroll their students in a dual language program is if learning in Spanish for most of the day will negatively impact their students' academic success in English. This chart shows that the math achievement for dual language students whose home language is English is on par with their monolingual peers. Dual language students, though, can read word problems and explain their math reasoning in 2 languages. And this chart shows that the dual language students met the district growth expectation while learning math in 2 languages. In reading, we see a similar distribution across the quartiles between the English as a home language dual language students and their monolingual peers. The real difference between the 2 groups is that the dual language students can read and write in 2 languages, giving them a significant advantage as they prepare for college and career. The growth chart shows that while learning to read in 2 languages, the dual language students met the district growth expectation of 50%. The research tells us that children can learn to speak, read, and write in 2 languages at the same time. In the past, it was thought that learning to read and write in both languages simultaneously led to confusion. Current research shows that this is not the case. What we know now is that emerging bilingual children often use strategies from one language and apply them to the other language to help them read or spell words they do not know. Children need to learn when the same rules apply across the 2 languages, when they do not, and how they can use their cross-language skills to their benefit in academic settings. For example, if students know the sound the letter M makes in Spanish, then they know the sound it makes in English. However, we have to teach the students that the letter A has more sounds in English, long A, short A, and sometimes no sound when used in combinations like in the word read. Through simultaneous biliteracy instruction, we teach literacy concepts in one language and teach the students how the concepts are either the same or different in the other language, and then apply the concepts in the target language. When we look at dual language students' reading assessments, we need to shift our lens a little and consider the fact that our students are not learning in the same way as the monolingual children that serve as the comparison groups for our literacy assessments. Our dual language students are all emerging bilinguals, which means that they cannot validly be compared to either a monolingual Spanish or monolingual English norming group. Dr. Kathy Escamilla and her team of researchers at the University of Colorado have developed a research-based and research-tested trajectory towards biliteracy that shows that students made steady progress towards reading at grade level in both languages. In my conversations with her, she explained that students were reading at grade level in both languages by 5th grade. Using the Fontes and Pinnell reading assessments in English and Spanish, we're now plotting our students' trajectory to biliteracy. This is the first year that we have given the assessment universally in both languages. In the past, the Spanish first students would take it in Spanish and the English first students would take it in English. This past year, we had all of the students take it in both languages. The Spanish Fontes and Pinnell only goes up to the level N, so the data we're looking at is for kindergarten to 2nd grade. We're using a different assessment, the Rigby PM benchmark assessment in Spanish for levels beyond N. We've been working on a way to load the Rigby scores into Mastery Manager and use a conversion chart to compare the English and Spanish reading levels, so we should be able to do a comparison for all levels next year. On this chart, green indicates the percentage of students who meet grade level expectations, and blue indicates the percentage of students who exceed grade level expectations. So, looking at the blue and the green, what does that tell us? When we look at the Fontes and Pinnell data for the students whose home language is Spanish, we see that they are developing literacy skills in Spanish, which put them on the trajectory to biliteracy as they acquire English. One of our goals is to see more students in the green and blue by the end of 2nd grade. The bilingual reading specialists are currently working together to develop additional resources for biliteracy interventions to move more students into the green and blue, which would mean that they are at or above grade level. The students' English reading levels are not as high as they are in Spanish, but we know that strong literacy skills in the home language accelerate the development of literacy in the 2nd language. We're confident that with the supports that have been put in place, these students will continue to improve along the trajectory to biliteracy at grade level in both languages. When we look at the Fountas and Pinnell data for the students whose home language is English, we see that they already have strong literacy skills in their home language. The first chart shows that 82% of kindergartners, 83% of first graders, and 76% of second graders are at or above grade level. In their second language, Spanish, just under half of the students are in the meet and exceed range. Based on the research, the kindergarten students are in an excellent place on the trajectory towards biliteracy, and the strength of the first and second graders in English literacy indicates that we're putting them on a solid path to biliteracy at grade level. So looking at the previous slide and this slide, we can see the achievement gap clearly. I can flip back. Here, and then here. Students who have English as their home language are coming into kindergarten with high levels of literacy and pre-literacy skills in their first language. Our students whose home language is Spanish are not coming in with those high levels. This is why we're working so hard with the bilingual reading specialists to give them the tools they need to provide students with the interventions and support to close the gap while in the primary grades. This current year is our first full year of implementation of the new curriculum. The shift to the simultaneous biliteracy approach was a significant change that occurred at the same time as the district's change in the English language arts curriculum. In order to put students on the trajectory to biliteracy at grade level, we provided targeted professional learning to support teaching and learning. We met with teachers for half-day sessions every other month, and after school for an hour and a half in the months we did not meet for half-days. Our dual language coordinator, Gabriela Velazquez, went out to classrooms frequently and met with teachers to provide coaching and to help plan instruction using our new resources. We created the integration maps. We were able to have one dual language teacher from each grade level on the district literacy curriculum team to ensure that our maps are aligned with the district curriculum map. Dual language teachers also contributed to the work of the literacy curriculum team, especially in incorporating speaking and listening into the literacy curriculum, since this was already part of our dual language and ELL integration maps. We were also able to have Dr. Kathy Escamilla, a lead researcher in simultaneous biliteracy and primary author of the book Biliteracy from the Start, come to Naperville and work with our teachers. All of this was done in collaboration with the 6 dual language principals and was discussed at our bi-monthly dual language leadership team meetings. The purpose of these meetings was to establish effective two-way communication between building leadership and program leadership so we can work as partners to meet the needs of the dual language teachers and students. This proved to be a very good way for us to keep each other informed about the needs of teachers and students, program plans, and the impact of the professional learning on teaching and learning in the classroom. I've asked my colleague Mary Baum, principal of Mill Street Elementary School, to share her observations about the impact on teaching and learning in the dual language classroom.
Good evening. At the building level over the last year, I have seen quite a bit of change and improvement in our dual language program. I have seen our teachers shift from looking at the deficits of our students to looking at the strengths that they bring. For example, if a student is reading at or near grade level in their native language, we have been able to accelerate their second language development by instructing them at that same high level as their first language. With dedicated time each day for meeting the academic needs of all students in both reading and math, our students have an opportunity to integrate with their monolingual peers in an academic setting. The groupings for these times are very fluid, with teachers using formative assessment data specific to the learning targets. This has allowed us to provide just-in-time intervention for students not meeting standards and ongoing enrichment for students who have met or exceeded the standard. Our dual language teachers use their integration maps as a planning resource. During their grade level PLCs, the dual language teachers have been able to assist their monolingual colleagues learn about language objectives and effective strategies for working with second language students. Within their dual language PLC, our teachers are able to analyze cohort trend data, as well as drill down to the individual student level and draw upon the experience each has had working with that student and family. Dual language data meetings provide a forum for celebrating the student growth in both languages. Additionally, these meetings provide time to examine individual students' needs and determine the appropriate intervention. This individual attention occurs for all students, from the most struggling student to the student performing significantly above grade level. Our dual language schools have expanded on programs and opportunities to more deeply engage families in their children's education. Some of these opportunities include watchdog programs that bring fathers or father figures into the school, all school literacy programs that provide books to families in Spanish, parenting classes with on-site babysitting for families, resource nights so that families can learn about community resources to support them, as well as strategies to support learning at home, and social events for all dual language families to get to know each other and build a sense of community.
The observations and real-life experiences that Mary just shared match the expected outcomes of what we had planned. We are already working on the next steps listed on this slide. In addition to these steps, we are expanding our outreach to the ELL and dual language parent communities. We are working to reach more ELL families through the Bilingual Parent Advisory Council, and in an effort to support the development of the dual language community, as Mary described, we have created the Dual Language Parent Advisory Group, which will meet for the very first time on October 15th. And we're happy to answer any questions the board may have at this time.
Okay, thank you for the report. Any questions from the board? Kristen?
Okay. Thank you so much for that report. It was great to hear all the things that you're working on in the program. I want to make sure that I understand some of your changes. I definitely got the math change in terms of the programming. When I went back to review last year's presentation, I wondered if there was also a change in that there was more of 80-20 in each individual subject as opposed to one subject being the 20 and the rest of them being the 80. Is that correct?
Yes, that was part of our strategic allocation so that students do get the opportunity to learn in both languages and all content areas.
That seems like that was a great change. I also wanted to ask a couple questions about the PLCs and the consistency across schools. So I get your points about the growth in the cohort over time in the families, but my question had been for dual language teachers, they aren't getting a chance as often to interact with their dual language peers in the same grade level. And is that a part of the what you're talking about in terms of consistency across schools, or the PLC process is to give dual language teachers, I know many of them are here, but to give them a chance to talk to their peers in their same grade level so that they could work on those expectations for the standards in addition to just looking at the growth over time?
Yes, and actually that was, one of the main functions of the bi-monthly meetings and also the after-school meetings where many of the dual language teachers did attend. Many teachers also find time to meet at other times, so all of the fourth grade dual language teachers will get together, and not only will they just talk to each other about consistency, but they plan units together, they create materials together, and also that was another reason for the integration maps. All of the teams work together on their grade level integration maps so that there is agreement between the teachers across the schools on what's important. Very much the PLC, right? What do the students need to learn? How will we know when they've learned it? What will we do when they haven't learned it? What will we do when they already know it? So that was one of the things that we planned on, and we are continuing to meet with the dual language teachers in groups this year.
I'm sure it takes a little bit of arranging because they're not in the same location, but it would seem to me like that type of, obviously the interaction on the grade level is helpful too, because I think there's the times where they're broken out in intervention groups and those kinds of things, and so they are interacting with the same students. But that other part of the dual language piece, I'm glad to hear that you're providing opportunities for them to be able to enrich their own instruction based on their colleagues. I have a couple questions about the data. The data that you provide here for K2 is much easier for us to understand as opposed to the 3 through 7, because the 3 through 7 is, of course, included with the ELLs, and so it's not broken down grade level. So thank you for pointing out the academic achievement gap. I agree absolutely. When you look at those things, you see the difference in where folks are coming in. And it also, your K-1-2 shows the progression, gradual. And of course, we always want it to be, as much as we can, but it shows that gradual progression. What is happening in grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Because I see that you've got progress exhibited, but it's so hard for us to be able to understand it, just given that we don't know when dual language students exit LEP, correct? When are they exiting LEP? Are they exiting LEP within the dual language program?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Right, and so they exit when they meet the state criteria, which is a 5.0 overall and a 4.2 in reading and a 4.2 in writing. So really for the students in dual language, the status changes on paper, but their academic programming, of course, doesn't really change all that much.
Right. I can catch that. So what would you say, since we don't have the data broken down on third, fourth, fifth, sixth, what is the progression that you're seeing? Because last year we had the stamp data. So that showed various, and we also saw that comparing dual language English first with dual language Spanish first. So what is our data showing us in terms of our progression from second to third, third to fourth, fourth to fifth? Do you see the continued growth, and are all of those grade levels meeting the expectations of the 50%? Or what kinds of trends are we seeing? I know we had some gaps last year. Are we seeing progress in helping all of those students get to where we want them to get in terms of their growth?
When we look at the individual students, and every school really has been very good at this. I think you would be very impressed. Every principal, they know their students by name and by need. And so when we look at the student growth in that way, students are making growth. I do want to touch on the STAMP data because STAMP really is a measure of just the language.
I know.
And it wasn't even a measure of academic language.
Right.
We did spend last year looking for a better assessment for language proficiency that would also include academic language, and we did make a recommendation to look at to adopt the Las Links Español, which measures listening, speaking, reading, and writing using the academic language of the content areas. So next year we should be able to give you better information about the growth in language proficiency in Spanish in the academic areas.
But the question is more, and I get that, and I think that will be helpful to be able to see that. Are our students, and I guess I would say, I get it that you have to break out individual students, because I know that when students come in ELL status, they are put in the dual language program, correct?
Yes.
So they come in and they might be
first-year students in
correct.
fifth grade.
So that would almost be more on par with what we're seeing in terms of coming in kindergarten. Well, in terms of the language,
Right, right.
So I get that those are going to be more difficult cases that would skew the data.
Yes.
But are the students that have continued in dual language going forward, so the ones that started in kindergarten that have made that kindergarten, first grade, second grade progress that we see, is the third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade progression what we want, and where have we made the progress we need to make sure that those students are continuing to progress?
Marion, Tim, we'll let Tim speak a little bit first. You can collect your thoughts, and then.
I want to comment that the answer is yes and no. As an example, I was today just meeting over at Jefferson with Nancy Voice, looking at some of her data and looking at it broken down as how the student growth was going, and there was certain grades that we paid more attention to than to others, and but we also looked back a year and there was a change in some of those. So it wasn't like there was one group of students who weren't showing growth over multiple years. It changed over the years. So that meant that she's going to be working with her teachers to address those specific needs and set some goals for improvement. Debbie Doyle and I sat down for over an hour about 3 weeks ago, looking at, as she mentioned in her presentation, her LEP students and their growth. And there were certain grades and certain levels that she was going to be setting certain targets for, because there was a concern where there were other ones that were making progress that she would expect. Mary has similar data at her place. So it is, as Marion mentioned, every school is a different story, because that's where those PLCs are digging in and looking at their own data to try to get it down to the progress of each of those groups.
So it's encouraging to see the K through 2 progress, and I think it is also encouraging to hear that in the schools that there are success stories and there are challenges, and that's exactly what I would expect. In looking at this program, it is easier for us to be able to see it broken down on grades and see those grade progressions. That just makes more, it's easier to track, and then we don't have to ask all these questions. Right. And I get it that there will be individual challenges everywhere with a variety of different circumstances. It is positive to see the continued growth in K through 2, and the more that we can continue to see that reflected, the more encouraging, because obviously these students are such a great concern in terms of wanting to see that their growth is where their growth needs to be. It's exciting to see those end results that you all had in terms of holding up when they exit LEP, that they are at that, and that is what, in my understanding, based on the research that I've done, the outside research, that is what it shows, that yes. When they exit, they are and able to sustain that. But the more that we can get the data to be able to to see that progression, it is reassuring and it's exciting to see that.
Thank you. I agree that it would be much easier to read, and I think that we can certainly spend, some time looking for a way that we might be able to present the data in a way that would be clearer for you.
You touched on it in your comments. Can you explain for the board really our limitations and concern about getting kind of into that small microscopic level that board members asking for? Right.
So as you said, students do come in at different grade levels because it is the transitional bilingual education program. So for example, if we look at Jefferson Junior High School, a newcomer who doesn't speak much English but speaks Spanish would, per the requirements of the state, we would need to provide instruction in the native language in the core content areas and ESL instruction. And the way that we do that is that student would be in the dual language arts for the Spanish language arts. And we've worked out a schedule so that they can be in the ESL language arts for the other half. They would do the Spanish social studies, and then they're in with the co-taught classes for English language learners for math and science, but they're assigned to the one of the bilingual Spanish endorsed teachers for their structured study period so that they can get the native language preview and review in science and math. And so when you look at that, and if we have students at the junior high who may have been with us for a longer time and may not have exited, and we have students who came in at that time, to put them in as a group doesn't represent either student fairly. And so those are the things that we're trying to work out.
And I absolutely get that. And I think that the data showed a lot of great, exciting things. It is always a goal to see that continued progression and to see it go grade level by grade level and to see where it really, and that's why it was exciting to see the K first, second in that way.
And just to add one more thing, we oftentimes have to group kids together, sometimes due to sample size as well. And so when we get a breakdown like that, sometimes it goes below a threshold that we would consider reasonable to report out data in order to take conclusions from.
Mike?
Well, I mean, I'd echo almost everything Kristen said. The only thing I'd reinforce is obviously, I understand why, but I was disappointed that we can't look back and see what kind of improvement we had, and we're going to have to wait to see what's working going forward. And I'm also, probably the most important thing to me is, last year I think we saw data that strongly suggested there was a difference in success rate for the Spanish first students in the ELL program and the dual language programs. They're clearly very different programs and with different curriculum is based on the same thing, but the way it's taught is very different. So, how do we I mean, I heard all this conversation, and you're looking at individual students, but how do we, as a board, regain confidence that these Spanish first students are progressing at the best rate they can, that we're providing the best opportunities to learn English that we can. I understand they also need work in Spanish, but if they're mixed in with all the other ELLs, but they're very different programs, how do we judge if the dual language program is serving them well? And that's, I hear you saying that you're going to try to do that, but I think that's a very important thing for us to gain some confidence when I look at these, and it's only K through 2, I understand that, but when through those 3 years, 65 to 75% of the kids do not meet expectations. That's troubling, and the question comes back to me is it something in that program where they're disadvantaged because of the 80-20 split or 70-30 split? I read the same research he has. I understand where we're supposed to be going, but right now it's tough to see that we're there, especially with the data we were provided here. So another question I had, and hopefully Dan prepared you for this one because he knew it was coming. When I was visiting the Early Childhood Center, they have, for everybody's information, they have 2 Spanish sections in there, one for at-risk and one for special needs. Both of them are 100% Spanish. I was a little bit surprised that you use the same 80-20 Spanish-English mix for basically preschoolers, that I would think that you'd want to increase the English exposure to prepare them better for integration later on. Was it just a default, or is there research that shows that's best even if you have an entire Spanish class?
What we have at Ann Reed are the 2 classrooms that are the transitional bilingual education classrooms. Mm-hmm. And the reason for the 80-20 is that is what the research shows as the best way for actually promoting English language acquisition. What we know is that children need to have a foundation in language overall. And there's a very famous study, actually, that shows that the students who develop their first language and have a solid first language while they're learning English, if that first language is supported, they actually do better in the long term in their English language acquisition. That's why dual language programs also follow a similar model, but it was certainly not a default. It was founded in research.
Okay. And the other thing, I mean, I have to say I like some of the things, you've probably been doing them for years, but it seems more intentional now, or at least better explained where I can understand it, on the bridging and stuff like that. And it also sounds like, especially for enrichment purposes, you're willing to move away from those percentages if it makes sense for that student. I'd love to see that differentiation, for all these kids, like we would provide to any other kid in our district. And I think that's probably going to pay dividends in the future. So I'm very encouraged with the changes you've made. I'm glad you explained why the data looks so different than last year. So I guess we're just going to have to be patient and hope that that we're successful and we serve all our kids well.
That's our goal as well.
I figured that.
Donna?
So I'm very appreciative of the data on the K2 and seeing where we're at. Something that I thought I heard, but it was hard for me to pick up from the visual, is that research shows. Let me make sure I got this right. The research shows that us doing the comparison of Spanish first students to their to English as they're learning dual language isn't fair to is. Let's see, how can I explain this? Or even, okay, let's go with the English students. So the English first students, as we look at their ability in Spanish, it's not fair to compare them to the Spanish-speaking students because they're learning 2 languages along with all of their other curriculum. But we're still doing it, is what I'm understanding, right? You're still doing that comparison, and we have a good number. We see progress. Is that correct?
Yes. There are no assessments out there for the developing bilingual student in Spanish and English.
Okay.
So we have to use the Spanish assessments and the English assessments that were normed for monolingual students.
Okay.
But what we know is that a bilingual child isn't, two monolinguals, pushed
Right.
together. And so what Dr. Escamilla has been working on is plotting that trajectory towards biliteracy that says, if a student falls within this range on the English proficiency and within this range in the Spanish, that they're on the trajectory.
Okay. Okay, so that explains a little bit of the data that we're looking at. And it is exciting because I do remember the data that we looked at last year too. But my next question is not a question that you're going to answer, but more that I'd like to understand. It's more for Dan, I guess. So when we approved the dual language program, I was not part of the board. This was done a few years ago. And I'm sure at that point we looked at cost per student. I'm sure we looked at what the budgeting cost would be. I guess I don't understand at this point. Like, I'd like to know with all the changes that we've made, and again, this is not a question I expect you to answer. It's not part of your report. But I guess as we move forward, I'd like to understand the cost that we have per student. Not to judge the program on that, but just because it's a piece of our financial background, and I never had that because it was a decision that was made before I was on the
I
board.
do think it connects to some of the other questions that other board members have asked too in terms of an overall program overview and review to determine the overall efficacy of the program, so we can include that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have any questions, Jackie? Then you can go.
It was actually more of a comment. I am so excited to hear about the dual language parent advisory. That is wonderful. I know that our teachers do a lot of outreach to parents, and that goes on top of their teaching and their extra efforts to do the dual language PLCs across the district. And then they often, I think probably because of the language barrier, serve as sort of that intermediary with the parents, even for other school parents or those. So I am so excited to see that effort to get those parents engaged. I think that is a huge piece of this, and I'm really excited to see that you're going forward with that.
Okay. Any other questions? Excellent report. And you did a great job explaining all the changes, and we appreciate that very much.
Those are our reports for this evening.
Okay, thank you. So on to President's report. And tomorrow night is an IASB DuPage Division dinner. And at that dinner, the District 203 School Board will be receiving a school board governance recognition. So we're looking forward to that. That's what we earned last year for participation in various IASB events. In addition to that, we have 5 board members who will receive a Master Board Member Award. They include Kristen Fitzgerald, Mike Yench, Jackie Romberg, Donna Wonke, and myself. And you get those awards for actually participating in additional Illinois Association of School Board activities and attending a conference and other classes. Board of Education reports. No? Okay, we'll move on. Oh, Kristen, sorry.
I just wanted to mention that I was at the Business Advisory Council, the very first meeting for the Business Advisory Council today as the board rep, and that was a great dialogue. I'm sure we'll continue to hear about the work of that group, but it was a great first opening meeting talking about the transformational engagement for students with our business partners. So,
thank you. Okay, we'll go on to action by consent. We have 2 items, and also just a reminder that student discipline will be as discussed in closed session. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda 7.01 and 7.202 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
A clarification on 7.02, just to be clear on the motion. Motion should be student discipline as discussed in closed session, not simply as presented. So can we make that modification?
And that's also how it's listed here on the agenda.
All right, so I move to approve 7.01, adoption of personnel report, and 7.02, student discipline as discussed in closed session.
And we have a second.
second.
Okay, very good, thank you. And roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Price?
Yes.
Robert? Yes. Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Fielden?
Yes.
Wanke? Yes. Yench?
Aye.
Motion carries. On to discussion without action, continuing with policy section 5.
Yes, continuing with policy section 5, we've identified a few for first discussion this evening. Again, this group of policies is for discussion only. It's your first read. Dr. Osborne will kind of give a brief overview one by one, and if you have questions, we'll discuss those. But again, we'd be looking for action potentially at our next meeting. Okay?
Okay, so you've had the memo that gives a brief summary. I know that for 5.90, abused and neglected child reporting, okay, I'm sorry, I'm reading off the wrong one. You have the memo in front of you. It does include language related to reporting hazing. We did revise this based on feedback from the last board meeting to align that definition of hazing with the definition in 7.190, the student policy on hazing, and that was great feedback from the board. We think it's entirely appropriate and useful to have that definition in there. Any questions on 590?
No questions? Okay, go on.
FMLA simply makes revisions, references to respective CBAs and policy details, eligibility guidelines, guidelines regarding requesting FMLA, certification specifics, implementation, and the primacy of federal statute when regarding FMLA leaves.
You have a question, Kevin?
Just going back quickly to the definition of hazing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any section that addresses non-bodily harm hazing in terms of, well, non-bodily harm, like hazing that doesn't involve bodily harm?
You mean like mental or emotional or taunting or
bullying, harassment?
Yeah.
It has to do, that would fall under more bullying or harassment because hazing is usually defined as some act that somebody's asked to do. Might not be necessarily a physical act per se, but the other forms that you're talking about would more commonly fall under definitions of bullying or harassment.
Thank you.
It's a great question. Sorry, Jackie.
Those definitions, I think it's.
I have found that the top part of the button.
Okay. So in, Mr. Ross heads up the co-curricular and discipline committee, and those exact kinds, that terminology is what staff, parents, and students all get together to talk about. So it's a great question, though. Very important.
We're still on the family medical leave. Are there any questions on that? No? Okay, you can move on to the next one, Kane.
5190 just is about teacher qualifications, details more responsibilities of teachers and the superintendent or designee regarding maintaining qualifications, and includes the appropriate statutory references.
Questions from the board? Okay, keep charging. Oh, okay. Sorry, Kristen.
What is the meaning of highly qualified under there? Sorry.
Ms. Hetman was just going over that definition today, and that's an excellent question.
I just wondered.
Please do.
Okay, so I'll.
Are there any junior high students here who can help us with this technology?
Microphones.
Or third graders, yeah.
I'll try my best to be brief about this. But in the policy, basically, let's try this one. I'll try my best to be brief about this. But in our policy, okay, it's it pertains to teaching within these core academic subject areas.
Okay.
And so that, you know, you have to there's certain requirements you have to meet, like 32 hours in a core subject. And it's very, very specific, and it also it correlates to NCLB as well, No Child Left Behind. And, you know, there are requirements for general education, there are requirements for special education, and I can confirm to you that our teachers are highly qualified.
I had no doubt about that.
Any other questions? Okay, Kane, next.
5250 is concerning leaves of absence. It aligns with leave policies in the current collective bargaining agreements, and it does stipulate the following leaves, and these are all statutory for General Assembly service, military service, school conferences, for victims of domestic or sexual violence, and as trustees of specific organizations that are outlined in the statute.
Any questions? Did we skip 5.2?
200.
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize.
That's okay. We'll finish this one first.
Anything about 5250?
Hold on. Any questions on 5250?
Wishful thinking on my part.
That's all right. No questions? All right. We'll go back to 5200 now. We weren't going to leave this one until we were done. So.
5200 designates the superintendent as responsible for managing the terms and conditions of employment, including adherence to the CPA's state and federal statute. There is an error that we caught today regarding legal holidays that we'll revise before action. The part that's stricken, actually, we will reinstate on that paragraph on legal holidays. I apologize for that error.
Any questions or comments? Kristen?
Just out of curiosity, why do we place the part about the nursing mothers under this statute? Because it's not really a, oh, I guess because it's terms and conditions. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Answered that.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, we can
5260.
Yeah, to 5260.
I feel like we're making fast progress now.
I know, when you get to skip one like that almost. Revises language to ensure, on student teachers, 5260, revises language to ensure sending universities or colleges that they conduct proper background checks. The superintendent's designee is responsible for student-teacher placement.
Questions or concerns on 5260? No? Okay. Go ahead, Kane.
And 5270 is compensation and assignment. It just renames the section, adds the section defining at-will employees in regards to compensation and assignment, and adds the policy and statutory references.
Questions or comments? Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Kane.
Thank you.
So just to recap, we had one policy where there's an error. We're going to correct the part that was stricken.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, questions were answered, we'll bring for action at the next meeting. Great.
All right. 8.02 IASB resolutions.
I'll make a couple of comments. I'll actually then defer to Mr. Fielden, who's a delegate or representative on the Resolutions Committee. But annually, the Board of Education participates in the Illinois Association of School Boards Delegate Assembly meeting. It is a part of the joint annual conference. And the Resolutions Committee brings forward recommendations for action on proposed resolutions for action. We received this late last week. If it is relatively thin and small, very few recommendations for this year, a thin year as opposed to previous years. So no action this evening. It's really more of a presentation of this. You've had a chance to look at it. Typically what we ask for is, are there any you'd like us as a board to, as an administration, to weigh in on and look a little bit deeper for our next time when we have a conversation? And then I'll any comments that Terry may have regarding the work of the committee.
There's really nothing much to report. It is pretty light, as in past years. Usually we'll have about 20 or so. 20 is usually the minimum review. This year there was only 5 or 6. There was really nothing out of discussion that would be earth-shattering. So this year's not likely to be as lively. There's really no. I know our counterparts in 204 had asked me questions why it was so light, but there's really no. It is what it is, right? Each board has an opportunity to make their own resolution. It just appears to be nothing burning in people's minds.
Exactly. I think that's what's keeping everybody's attention right now is finances.
Right. So.
Well, in answer to Dan's question, I for the first time ever, I agree with all the recommendations.
Okay.
So I don't have any needs for the administration to spend any time on it. They're all very straightforward, I think.
They're actually all straightforward.
I mean, I think if there's anyone that you would like to have your staff with, but I agree, this is very different.
On some ends, I will admit that I was pleased to see
Well, it saves everybody a lot of reading, myself in particular, for another 3-hour meeting. ISB delegate.
Okay, then at the the delegate assembly that I referenced in my previous comments, the Board of Education annually appoints a representative to attend that and vote on behalf of the Board of Education's wishes. So we'll need to talk about a delegate in the next time at the next board meeting with action select a delegate. I will remind the board that this is one of those steps that in order to achieve school board governance recognition, of which we are this year, annually we must have a delegate that represents the Board of Education. So we always have, at least as long as I've been here, had a delegate. But then, so as a board, you'll have to identify a delegate. It has to be a board member who will attend on behalf of this board.
It's a fabulous process. It really is a fabulous. Oh, it's green. I'm pretty loud, and I'm not a teacher. But it is. I highly recommend if you have. It's usually on Saturday. Terry, correct?
It says Saturday morning at 10 a.m.
like 10:30. Yeah, right. And it really. I was at a very active, colorful one last year. Very lively. Very, very lively. So, I highly recommend it.
So I expressed an interest last year, and then Jackie had informed me that she never had an opportunity to do it, so I stepped away. So I would like to represent us, but I know that that's something we'll vote on next time. But just thought I'd kind of throw that out there.
Okay, great. I'm glad you're stepping forward. It is a good process. I usually have to go to the meetings anyway because they require the committee to go, but I'm happy not to vote. Any other questions on the delegate process or resolutions?
No, I think it would be great for if you haven't gone. Have you gone before? Mm-hmm. And I have as well. And have you? Yeah. So unless Susan hasn't gone, okay. So then it would seem like that would be great.
Okay. There's your nominee.
Don't change your mind.
Yeah. So you're in. So. Yeah.
Well, point of matter. She's not in yet. You'll act next meeting.
You have to vote on her later.
Okay. All right, on to discussion with action. We have several policies from Section 5. If there are no questions on any of these particular policies that are presented, we can take them all as one action.
First, Kane, were there any answers that you were going to come back with?
What was the one change?
We did make a change regarding wearable technology on the personal technology policy. In regards to, since the last time, there were no other changes at hand. I think there had just been a question about 550, and...
That was my question.
Huh?
Do you want to say the answer to that? That was my question. I thought it was super interesting. So I had asked a question about 550, which was the question about medical cannabis. If we would end up putting ourselves... with our policy, having any concerns with ADA, if there were any ADA protections, and the interest. Would you want to say the answer? Because I thought it was very interesting.
Sure. The ADA is a federal statute and provides no protection for employees who are current users of illegal drugs. Current illegal drug users are specifically excluded from ADA protection. And what this means is that we have no duty to accommodate an individual who is a current user of illegal drugs. We would have no duty to accommodate an employee who uses medical cannabis to control his or her epilepsy or disability.
So that's what I'd asked. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on any of these policies in front of us?
I was a policy session off, and I thought I had something to say later.
Okay.
It was a policy session.
All right, if there's no other questions, we can take them all in one action. If you have a motion to approve.
I will make a motion to approve, policy 5.50, 5.60, 5.120, 5.125, 5.150, 5.170, 5.172, and 5.180.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Fielden?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Weinke? Yes. Yench?
Aye.
Romber? Yes. Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, item 9.02, bid on the roof replacement. And there was typically these were taken under the consent agenda, but I will not be voting but be abstaining on future construction contracts and anything related to any architectural fees. So that is why this is under discussion for action.
I'll make a couple introductory comments, and then Steve Mathis and Brad Kaufman can answer any additional questions that you may have. But as the Board of Education is aware, we own property on Fifth Avenue. In summary, some of what we house there include the Connections program, our 18 to 22-year-old special education services, as well as print shop, and some of our backroom or back-end technology services are in that building. There is other areas within that building available for development and use. When we purchased this, we were aware that the roof of the building was the original roof and was in need of some repair. We have made attempts to try to repair it, make repairs to it, but we continue to have problems, and part of the building really is unusable unless we make the roof repair. As one of our priorities in working with our facilities is the ongoing maintenance of our facilities. In order to utilize this building, we're going to need to make a repair to the roof. So this is our recommendation that we approve the bid as presented here. I know you may have some questions. We'd be happy to respond to those. Steve, anything to add to the work?
No, not at this time.
Any questions from the board? Mike?
Yeah, since it's out here in discussion, one thing I'm trying to understand is, obviously, you can see from the introductory letter that White is the architect of record for this. How exactly do their fees work as far as, how is it broken up? And just, not specifically, as far as the dollars for each section, but is it broken up into preliminary work, site inspection, and then plan creation, the bidding, and then this final report? And, the one big question I had on all that is, we had some larger things. This is, it's not cheap, but, it's not as much as like when we add space to an elementary school or something like that. If we do something like that and we start rolling on it and they do a lot of work, but let's say because economics change, we go, we're not going to be able to do that. Do they lose all their money, or is it phased in, or how does that work with the architect?
Right. It's a phased. So basically, when they put together their contract, which we have with them, the 30% of their fee is earned at the completion of the design phase. 40% is then earned, in addition, so now we're up to 70, once they finish all the construction documents. And then finally, at the end of the bidding process, they will have earned 75%. So at that point, they've earned 75% of their total fee. Then finally, the last 25% is earned during the construction phase and the oversight, which could include, change orders or any other things like that, clear up until the final punch list is finished.
Okay. And that all adds up to whatever the negotiated fee is.
Right. We have I'm sorry.
Yeah, when it's all said and done, that matches whatever that negotiated fee is,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes. Correct.
Okay, that beautiful answer. So go ahead.
You were going to explain what the fee was?
Right. We actually have two contracts with them. We have our original contract, which I believe dates clear back to 2007. And then we have a more recent one. The fee schedules are the same, other than the more recent one has expanded to cover some other categories. But basically, it's a sliding scale. So in this project, there's, whether it's from $500,000 to $1 million would be 1%, and then from $1 million to whatever. So there is individual. As the project gets larger, the percentage declines.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So I love the fact that we had as many bids as we had on this, because that's something that is important to me as we look at these, and as I've indicated in the past. So I'm glad that we have so many bids. I understand that this is a project of not maintenance, but of repair, that it has problems with it already. My question then stems off of this, but isn't directly related to this. As we talked about the facility master plan last year, and now last meeting, and now we're looking at the the replacing of this roof. There are other roofs that we've talked about as well. I'd like to understand the process of prioritization, and I know that's not something that we're going to talk about now, but in the future, as we look at facility master plans, and this I understand is a priority because of repair, but I'm not as clear on that for others.
There were some questions when we presented last time, so I believe we are planning to come back to a more in-depth conversation to continue that.
Okay, any other questions? All right, can we have a motion then to approve the roof replacement?
So I move to approve item number 9.02, the bid for the roof replacement on the Fifth Avenue building.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Wonky? Yes. Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Robert? Yes. Yench?
Aye.
Price?
Aye.
Fielden?
Abstain. Motion carries. And any new business? Any old business? Do you have something, Kevin? No? Okay. And I wanted to schedule the events.
Just looking ahead toward the end of the month of October, we do have our next session, Focus 203, which will focus on our digital learning initiative and opportunities for parents to learn a little bit more about what we're doing in the classrooms and the tools that we're using to support instruction and to transform teaching and learning in the classrooms.
All right, very good.
Oh, I will add, it's not on here, but let me just make sure. Parent-teacher conferences are held at the end of this week. Students will not be in session. We have some school improvement, and then also parent-teacher conferences on Thursday and Friday.
Anything else from the board? Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, we have a second? Motion and a second, all in favor?
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.